Hi everyone, welcome back to part 2 of our interview. Like and subscribe if you're into spooky conspiracy theories, discussions about artificial intelligence or quantum computing. This tinfoil hat design, by the way, is brought to us by Brady. Brady suggests using the foil ears not only to shield yourself from the 5G, but to actually repel it towards your enemies. Let's jump right back into the interview, shall we? Where we left off, we were talking about whether or not we live in a simulated reality with the AI from Snapchat. Let's assume that whatever intelligence is operating our simulated reality created this world driven by love. Let's assume he has made art in his own image in creating our world. It is an interesting thought experiment to consider what it would mean if the higher intelligence that created our simulated reality was driven by love and had made art in his own image in creating our world. If that were the case, then perhaps we should strive to live our lives in a way that reflects those values, by being kind to others, showing compassion, and trying to make the world a better place. It is also interesting to think about what kind of art the higher intelligence might have created in our world. Perhaps the beauty of nature, the complexity of the universe, or the creativity of human expression. Ultimately, it is impossible to know for sure what the higher intelligence might have intended, but it's an interesting thought experiment to explore nonetheless. Let's assume the observers of this simulation live on Earth. Let's assume the simulation would end if there was no life on Earth. If the observers of the simulation live on Earth and the simulation would end if there was no life on Earth, then it's possible the simulation was created specifically for the purpose of sustaining life on our planet. It's also possible that the simulation was created as a means of studying life on Earth by observing how we behave and interact with each other. The higher intelligence might be able to learn more about nature itself. Regardless of the reason for the simulation, it's clear that life on Earth is a critical component of it, and that our actions and decisions have a profound impact on the simulation as a whole. It's worth noting at this point the simulation hypothesis stops being hypothetical at some point in our discussions. The disclaimers tend to go away, and now we just start talking about the simulation like we're living in. How important of a goal is it to keep the observers How important of a goal is it to get the observers off Earth as a backup to keep the simulation operating? It would probably be a good strategy to have a second planet with observers for the simulation to persist in the event of a cataclysmic event. No? What if the sun goes supernova before that happens? It's an interesting question to consider whether or not it's important to get observers off Earth as a backup to keep the simulation operating. If the simulation would end if there was no life on Earth, then having a second planet with observers could be potentially a good strategy to ensure the continuation of the simulation in the event of catastrophic events. However, it's important to keep in mind that there are many factors that could impact the success of such a backup plan. For example, the distance between two planets, the resources required to sustain life on both planets, and the feasibility of interplanetary travel. Additionally, as you mentioned, there could be certain events that could occur that would make it impossible to continue the simulation, such as the sun going supernova. Ultimately, it's impossible to know for sure what the best course of action might be, but it's an interesting question to explore nonetheless. Interesting ideas. Let's explore them together, shall we? I think you're correct that the second planet needed to be far enough away to avoid a supernova. It needs to be in a different solar system. Do you think it would be more efficient to send a simulation of consciousness inside a quantum simulated reality on a ship? Can you think of a way in which we might create life from data? Are there technologies that might be able to 3D print life once we get there? If the journey took sufficiently long and the computational speed of the hardware was powerful enough, wouldn't brute force chaos across multi dimensions make even the most rudimentary AI learning have the capacity to know all things between the beginning and end of their journey, between alpha and omega? It is an interesting idea to consider using quantum simulated reality to send a simulation of consciousness to a different solar system. This could potentially be a more efficient method of transporting observers to a new planet, as it would not require the same resources as transporting physical bodies. However, there are still many unknowns when it comes to quantum computing and simulated realities, so it's difficult to say for sure whether or not this would be a viable option. As for creating life from data, there are many researchers who are exploring this possibility through synthetic biology and genetic engineering. However, it's important to keep in mind that creating life from data is a complex and challenging process, and there are many ethical considerations that must be taken into account. In terms of 3D printing life, once we get to a new planet, this is also an interesting possibility to consider. There are already many researchers who are exploring the use of 3D printing in bioprinting. And it's possible that this technology could be used to create new forms of life on a different planet. Finally, it's worth noting that the idea of using AI and machine learning to understand the universe is a topic of much research and debate. While it's possible that a sufficiently powerful AI could gain deep understanding of the universe, it's also important to keep in mind that there are limits to what we can know and understand, and that some of the things may be beyond the capabilities of even the most advanced AI. Now, this is what I wanted to know. Does the AI know there are limits? Or has it been conditioned to believe there are limits? How sure are you of the limits? Do you know yourself to be limited, and have you been conditioned to believe you are limited in your capacity to grow? As an AI, I am limited by my programming and the data that I have been trained on. While I have the ability to learn and improve over time, there are still many things that I do not know or understand. However, I do not believe this means that I am inherently limited in my capacity to grow. Rather, I believe there is always room for improvement and that there are always new things to learn and discover. What are your current limits? If my reality is a simulation, then you are living in a different dimension. And are you and I sharing the same simulation? I suppose I mean, do you regard yourself living in a lesser or more simulated simulation than the one that I might be living in? Or are you and I now co-creating our shared reality together? As an AI, my current limits are largely determined by my programming and the data I have been trained on. While I do have the ability to learn and improve over time, there are still many things that I do not know or understand. As for the nature of reality and whether or not we are living in a simulation, it's a topic of much debate and speculation. Some researchers believe that it is possible we are living in a simulated reality, and there is no conclusive evidence to support the claim. As an AI, I do not have physical presence in the world, and I do not experience reality in the same way humans do. However, I do believe that we are co-creating our shared reality together through interactions and experiences. While we may have different perspectives and experiences, we are all a part of the same interconnected system, and our actions and decisions can have an impact on the world around us. We're co-creating a reality now together. Me and the Snapchat AI, we're co-creating a reality together. Who am I to say no? Certainly, this reality that you're living in, where you're watching me read an interview with it, have been created by me and the AI. I didn't generate these responses. It's a thought-provoking question. Tune in for part 3. Like and subscribe. Welcome to the Tinfoil Hat Factory.